6 Messerschmitt Bf-109 circle above the Leary Valley like wolves around wounded prey. Their predatory patience is a practiced, cold thing. Sun glints off their sleek, olive-drab fuselages and the stark black crosses on their wings. They orbit at 18,000 feet, the thin September air making their engines sound like a distant, malevolent buzz. Below them, trailing through fractured cumulus clouds, is their intended victim, a lone Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. It is limping, a telltale feather of white vapor, coolant or fuel, streaming from its belly. To the German pilots, veterans all, it is a textbook scenario. A rookie, separated from his herd, his formidable formation vanished into the vastness of the sky over occupied France. No wingman to guard his vulnerable 6 o'clock, no altitude to convert into life-saving speed, just a slow, heavy, wounded bird, an easy kill. They tighten their circle, a noose of aluminum and firepower, and begin their descent. The lead pilot, his thumb resting on the cannon trigger, settles into the kill position. This will be quick. Then, the impossible happens. The Thunderbolt, instead of the predicted desperate dive or the futile wide banking turn, executes a maneuver that defies every rule etched into the Allied pilot's consciousness. It rolls, not with the sluggish, laborious wallow expected of the 7-ton jug, but with a violent, decisive, left-handed snap. The massive aircraft seems to pivot on its axis, its huge elliptical wings slicing from level to near vertical in the blink of an eye. As it completes this shocking roll, the pilot hauls back on the stick. The Thunderbolt's nose sweeps around in a tight, gut-wrenching arc, cutting directly inside the lead 109's perfectly calculated firing solution. The Germans' cannon shells, meant to intersect the P-47's former flight path, stitch a line of explosions through empty air. On the German radio frequency, disciplined calm shatters. Dreht mit uns! A voice crackles, laced with disbelief. He's turning with us! Another sharper. Das ist unmöglich! It's impossible! The Wolfpack's coordinated attack disintegrates into individual reactions of surprise and frustration. For 6 long minutes, the sky becomes a whirling, twisting arena where physics itself seems to have been suspended. When the combatants finally disengage, it is not the Thunderbolt that is spiraling down in flames. It is the 6 Bf-109s, their fuel states critical, their pilots' nerves frayed, who break contact and dive for their distant base, leaving the lone American to fly on. France, September 6, 1944. In a cramped cockpit smelling of hot oil, cordite, and fear, a 22-year-old corporal from Central California had just rewritten the rules of engagement, not through reckless bravery, but through the quiet, meticulous application of a theory born in a farmer's workshop and refined in a secret notebook. 1. The unforgiving sky, doctrine writ in blood and aluminum. The sky over occupied Europe in the late summer of 1944 was a vast, lethal laboratory. At altitudes where oxygen was a bottled commodity and temperatures plunged far below zero, the air war had settled into a brutal rhythm of industrial-scale attrition. For the pilots of the U.S. 8th and 9th Air Forces, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt was both fortress and burden. Its nicknames told the story: the Jug, for its jug-like fuselage; the Milk Bottle, 7 tons of fighter. It was the heaviest single-engine fighter of the war, a breathtaking feat of American engineering built around the mighty 2,000-horsepower Pratt & Whitney R-2800 Double Wasp. In a dive, it was unparalleled, a screaming hammer that could outrun any pursuing enemy. Its 850 caliber Browning machine guns could shred armor and aircraft alike. It was rugged, able to absorb phenomenal punishment and bring its pilot home. But it had one glaring and, in the eyes of many, fatal flaw. It could not turn. This was not opinion, it was physics, codified into immutable doctrine. A fighter's turning ability is primarily dictated by wing loading, the aircraft's weight divided by the area of its wings. The P-47, combat loaded, weighed over 14,500 pounds, spread across 300 square feet of wing. This gave it a wing loading of roughly 48 pounds per square foot. Its primary adversary, the Messerschmitt Bf-109G, weighed about 7,500 pounds with an area of 174 square feet, yielding a wing loading of around 43 pounds per square foot. On paper, the 109 was nimbler. In the sky, the difference was catastrophic. Combat reports and intelligence summaries from 1943 to 44 were unequivocal. A Bf-109 could sustain a tight 4G turn at combat speed for crucial seconds longer than a Thunderbolt. When a P-47 attempted to engage in a classic sustained turning dogfight, a tail chase, the results were grim. The Jug would bleed airspeed rapidly, its controls growing heavy and unresponsive. The dreaded buffet, a shuddering of the wings, would signal an impending stall. If the pilot persisted, the aircraft could snap into a spin, a death sentence at low altitude. The loss rates were stark and discouraging. Pilots who violated the core tenet of P-47 employment, never turn with a German fighter, statistically did not last. Thus, the doctrine was hammered into every new pilot during training, a mantra repeated by grizzled flight leaders. Speed is life, altitude is life insurance. If you're bounced, roll out and dive. Use your weight, use your power, hit and run. Do not try to dogfight. This was the sacred text, written in the blood of those who had ignored it. The P-47 was a boom and zoom artist, a high-altitude energy fighter. Its role was to dive from altitude onto unsuspecting enemies, unleash its devastating firepower, and use its retained speed to climb back to safety. To ask it to duel in a horizontal turning contest was to ask a heavyweight boxer to win a ballet competition. Into this world of absolute physical law and hard-won tragic wisdom stepped a man who seemed utterly miscast for the part of a revolutionary. Corporal Raymond Wetmore was, by all standard measures, an unremarkable and unlikely fighter pilot. 2. The Thinker, a mind built for puzzles, not dogfights. Raymond Wetmore was born in 1922 in the flat, endless farmlands of Merced County, California. His childhood was one of grease, grit, and practical problem-solving. On the family's 200-acre farm, machinery broke down, and professional mechanics were a luxury they could not afford. Wetmore's father taught him a fundamental principle. To fix something, you must first understand why it failed. Don't force it, analyze it. By his teens, Raymond could disassemble and reassemble a tractor transmission, not by rote memory from a manual, but by intuitively grasping the interaction of gears, shafts, and bearings. He was a natural engineer, a solver of three-dimensional puzzles. Quiet, introspective, and physically slight, he wore wire-rimmed glasses and spoke in careful, complete sentences, as if testing each word for structural integrity before releasing it. He dreamed of designing aircraft, and after Pearl Harbor, he enlisted with the goal of becoming a pilot. The Army Air Forces, however, was not sure what to make of him. He washed out of advanced fighter training twice. Evaluations consistently noted his competence, but condemned his temperament. Lacks aggression, over-analytical, not suited for fighters. He was too slow, too thoughtful. In simulated combat, he would be calculating geometry while his opponent was already filling the sky with simulated gunfire. Relegated to flying C-47 transport planes, a safe but unglamorous posting, Wetmore chafed at the sidelines. In late 1943, as the Allied Air Forces explosively expanded and pilot standards relaxed, he got a third chance. He barely scraped through, his gunnery scores mediocre, his fighter pilot's instinct deemed absent. As a mercy posting, he was assigned to P-47s. The thinking was that the Jug's forgiving nature and ruggedness might give a cautious pilot like Wetmore a fighting chance to survive his tour. His final instructor's note was damningly faint in its praise. Wetmore will never be an ace,
but he might live long enough to finish his tour if he sticks to escort duty and follows the manual. Arriving at the 365th Fighter Group at RAF Boxstead in March 1944, Wetmore confirmed every low expectation. He did not drink heavily, chase local women, or brag about future victories. While his squadron mates played poker or wrote letters home, Wetmore could be found lying on his back under the belly of his assigned P-47D, tail number 2026888, sketching the control linkages in a leather-bound notebook. His crew chief, a no-nonsense Brooklynite named Staff Sergeant Dutch Callahan, was initially suspicious. Pilots flew the planes, they didn't diagnose them. But Callahan came to respect the young corporal's quiet intensity. Wetmore asked questions no one else did. What is the exact cable tension on the ailerons? How many pounds of force does it take for full deflection at 250 miles per hour? What is the maximum theoretical roll rate? Wetmore's notebook became a repository of esoteric data.
The anomaly. Ailerons built for a different war. In a design otherwise ruthlessly optimized for straight-line speed and dive performance, the huge engine, the teardrop canopy, the wide-track landing gear, the Thunderbolt's ailerons were disproportionately massive. Each one was 18 inches wide and over 8 feet long, giving the aircraft a phenomenal roll rate for its size, reportedly around 90 to 100 degrees per second at certain speeds. This was a curious emphasis on a control surface critical for rapid lateral movement, not for the sustained horizontal turning that was the aircraft's acknowledged weakness. Wetmore pondered this. Republic Aviation's engineers were not fools. They didn't add weight and complexity without reason. Was the roll rate merely for gentle banking during escort duty? It seemed excessive. He began reviewing gun camera footage from squadron engagements, frame by painstaking frame. He saw what the doctrine predicted, P-47s trying to turn with 109s and losing. But he also saw glimpses of something else. In moments of pure, instinctive panic, pilots would sometimes jerk the stick hard over. The aircraft would snap roll violently, and in that disorienting instant, the attacking enemy would overshoot. These were not coordinated turns. They were frantic, last-ditch defensive jerks, usually followed by a dive. But they worked. A theory began to form in Wetmore's analytical mind, a hypothesis that challenged the core of P-47 dogma. What if everyone was thinking about turning all wrong? Doctrine assumed a turn was a sustained, coordinated maneuver in a single plane, a circle. But air combat isn't about circles, it's about angles and time. What if the key wasn't to win a sustained turning contest, but to change your aircraft's attitude so fast that the enemy's firing solution became invalid? He sketched it in his notebook. Instead of the standard energy-bleeding bank and pull, what if you used those enormous ailerons to their maximum potential? At the precise moment an attacker committed to his firing pass, you would slam the stick full left or right. The P-47 would snap roll to a 90-degree knife-edge bank in under a second. Then, immediately, you would apply full back pressure on the stick. In this knife-edge position, the elevator would act as the primary turning surface, pulling the nose through a tight arc perpendicular to your original flight path. It would be a radical, transient maneuver, a flick turn, not a sustained one. The G-forces would be immense, perhaps 6 or 7 Gs, crushing the pilot into his seat. The airframe would groan under stresses it was rarely asked to endure. But mathematically, the turn radius at that instantaneous moment could be significantly tighter than anything in the manual. It was a maneuver of desperation, not of finesse. It traded enormous amounts of kinetic energy, speed, for a shocking, rapid change in direction. You would end up slow and vulnerable, but if timed perfectly, you would be alive, and the enemy would be streaking past, unable to follow. You had broken his attack. Wetmore took his theory to his flight leader, Captain Marcus Halling, a tough, by-the-book veteran.
Halling listened for a minute before cutting him off. "You want to snap roll a 7-ton fighter at combat speed? Wetmore, that's how you end up writing a letter to your mother. Forget this pencil pushing. Fly the airplane the way you were taught. That's an order." Chastened, Wetmore shelved the idea. For 31 combat missions, he flew by the book. He dove when threatened, he stayed with the bombers, he survived. He watched more aggressive pilots score kills, and others who made mistakes vanish in flames. He accumulated 0 victories and a reputation as a reliable, if uninspired, pilot. The notebook stayed in his footlocker. The theory remained just that, a series of elegant equations untested in the crucible of combat. Until September 6th, when the sky over the Leary Valley presented him with a choice: die by the book or try to live by his own calculations.
Wetmore, his muscles screaming, watched the speck of the 109 swell as it dove. He waited, counting, his theory facing its ultimate test. At the last possible second, instead of trying to turn away in the horizontal plane, he snapped his wings vertical again, presenting the narrowest possible profile to the diving attacker. Hoffman's high-speed pass was perfectly aimed for where the P-47 would have been if it had tried a conventional evasion. It was not. The cannon fire missed by feet. Hoffman pulled out of his dive far below, his attack spent, his fuel now critical. The psychological break was complete. The pack had been defanged by a maneuver they could not comprehend, executed by an aircraft they believed incapable of it. Hoffman's order was terse and defeated. "Abruk, zurück zu Basis." Break off, return to base. The 6 Bf-109s, their tactical certainty in tatters, dove away eastward, leaving the sky to the lone, staggering Thunderbolt and the B-17 it had saved. Wetmore, drenched in sweat, trembling with fatigue and adrenaline, could barely raise his hand to key his microphone. The B-17 pilot's voice, thick with emotion, crackled in his headset. "Thunderbolt, you just saved our lives. Who are you?" Wetmore took a ragged breath. "P-47, tail number 2026884, he replied, his voice hoarse. "Heading home." V. The aftermath. From heresy to doctrine. The return to RAF Boxstead was an anticlimax shrouded in exhaustion. As Wetmore's battered P-47 taxied to its hardstand, Dutch Callahan knew instantly something extraordinary had happened. The aircraft sat differently on its tires. A close inspection revealed stressed skin around the wing roots, slightly bent aileron hinges, and control cables stretched to their limits. This was not damage from enemy fire. This was structural fatigue from maneuvers far beyond normal design limits. "What in hell did you do to my airplane?" Dutch asked, his mechanic's eye seeing a story of incredible stress. The gun camera footage, developed and screened that evening, told the undeniable truth. Intelligence officers and senior pilots watched in stunned silence as the film showed a P-47 performing the impossible repeatedly. 11 separate defensive snap-roll reversals, 6 seasoned enemy pilots thwarted, a tactical miracle. Captain Halling, who had dismissed Wetmore's theory months before, summoned him. He watched the footage again, then turned to the pale, still shaking corporal. "Explain it," he said, not as an order, but as a request. Wetmore did, pulling out his dog-eared notebook, pointing to his diagrams of force vectors and aileron authority. He described it not as heroics, but as applied mechanics. Halling listened, his earlier derision replaced by a dawning realization. When Wetmore finished, Halling asked the pivotal question: "Can you teach it?" The answer was not simple. The Wetmore Whip, as it began to be called, though Wetmore himself disliked the name, was not a panacea. It was a high-risk, high-G defensive tactic of last resort. It required exquisite timing, immense physical strength, and a deep trust in the airframe's hidden reserves. It could not turn a P-47 into a dogfighter, but it could turn a certain kill into a chance for survival. A controlled, unofficial test was authorized. 6 volunteer pilots, initially skeptical, were briefed by Wetmore. They practiced at altitude, with a chase plane simulating attacks. 3 of the 6 successfully executed the maneuver. 1 overstressed his aircraft and was grounded. The results, however, were convincing enough. The technique worked. It provided a way out of the inescapable trap. Word spread through the fighter groups like wildfire. Pilots began experimenting, adapting the core concept, maximizing roll rate to achieve a rapid transient turn, and integrating it with rudder inputs for tighter performance. It was refined, practiced, and slowly incorporated into the P-47 community's tactical vocabulary. Loss rates in scenarios where pilots were caught at a disadvantage showed a measurable, if not revolutionary, decline. More importantly, German after-action reports from late 1944 began noting increased difficulty with P-47s that exhibited unexpectedly sharp initial turning characteristics. The psychological edge had shifted slightly. The lumbering jug now had a sting in its tail, a final shocking move that could spoil the surest attack. VI, Legacy, the quiet innovator and the language of combat. Raymond Wetmore completed his tour, scoring 2 confirmed kills using variations of his own technique. He returned to the United States not as a celebrated ace, but as a quiet veteran. He earned his engineering degree, married, and spent a decades-long career at Lockheed, contributing to advanced flight control systems. He seldom spoke of the war or his contribution to fighter tactics. His notebook was filed away in an Air Force archive, a curious relic. His legacy, however, far outlived the thunder of the double wasp. The insight of the Wetmore whip that rapid, aggressive roll-based maneuvering could defeat a tracking gun solution transcended the piston engine era. It was a precursor to the brake turn and slice-back maneuvers that became foundational to jet-age air combat maneuvering, ACM. The principle that an aircraft's published performance envelopes could be extended by understanding and exploiting its control dynamics at the edge of the envelope became a tenet of test pilot philosophy and tactical innovation. Wetmore's story is not one of flamboyant heroism, but of intellectual courage. In a system that demanded conformity and relied on hard-won, bloody doctrine, he dared to look at the same tools as everyone else and see a hidden capability. He proved that in the crucible of combat, innovation is not just about new technology, but often about a new understanding of the technology you already possess. He was a mechanic at heart who fixed a lethal tactical problem not by waiting for a new part, but by rethinking the assembly of the parts he had. The sky over the Leary Valley on September 6, 1944, was witness to more than a remarkable survival. It witnessed the moment a thinker, armed with a farmer's logic and an engineer's notebook, forced a recalculation not just of 6 German pilots, but of the very physics believed to govern his war. He demonstrated that the final and most important variable in the equation of aerial combat is the human mind's refusal to accept the impossible.